There are moments in life when you're forced to leave an old world behind and forge a new path. For me, that crossroads led to a new city, a new home, and a fresh start. A beginning where I hope to keep the most precious companion of my life, this car, in peace and security. It wasn't merely a vehicle, it was a part of my identity, a testament to my hard work, a silent witness to every journey I had undertaken. When I first arrived in this new neighborhood, everything felt right. The quiet, the clean streets, and that quaint charm often lost in bigger cities. I thought, perhaps here, my search for tranquility would finally end. But life, as it often does, has a peculiar way of showing you exactly what you've been trying to avoid. I remember that moment vividly, parking my car in this new garage for the first time. The serenity of that instant, the feeling of weaving new dreams in a new home, it was everything I desired. Yet, swiftly, a shadow began to loom over my peace. That shadow, whom I now knew as Karen, passed by my house, her gaze fixated directly on my car. There was a peculiar glint in her eyes, an unease, a question mark. Her face, her gait, everything about her suggested that this neighborhood wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. It was like the gathering of clouds before a sunrise, a premonition of what was to come. My car wasn't just a means of transport, it was my personal sanctuary, a place where I'd embark on long drives, lost in thought, where my secrets were safe, my solitude complete. I recall one evening, cleaning my car, when I noticed her watching me from across the street. She stopped for a moment, then moved on. I dismissed it as a new neighbor's curiosity about a new arrival's car. But then, it became a pattern. Every time I took my car out, or worked on it, her gaze would invariably find me. At first, it seemed like a fleeting interest, but slowly, it grew into something intrusive and disquieting. This person, whom I now knew as Karen, began to scrutinize my every move, and her intention wasn't merely curiosity. She harbored something far more unsettling. She was an architect of intrusion, subtly chipping away at the quiet peace I had carefully built. Her eyes, those piercing, judgmental eyes, didn't just observe. They dissected. She'd linger, sometimes pretending to talk on her phone, other times openly staring, as if cataloging every detail of my property, especially my car. It was an unnerving ritual, a constant reminder that my private space was under a silent, unrelenting surveillance from within the neighborhood itself. The unspoken question in her gaze was clear. Who are you, and what are you hiding? She didn't realize that in asking that question, she was about to awaken a past I had desperately tried to leave behind, and unleash a storm far grander than her petty curiosities could ever fathom. The initial encounters with Corinne were, at first, merely a nuisance. Her incessant, almost obsessive, complaints about trivial matters, the precise height of my hedges, the unapproved color of my porch light were the expected background noise of an overzealous HOA. I attempted to navigate these waters with calm diplomacy, offering polite explanations or making minor adjustments, but her persistence quickly revealed a deeper agenda. This wasn't about community standards. It was about control, about establishing dominance, and for reasons I couldn't yet fathom, I was her chosen target. The passive-aggressive notes escalated to outright accusations during staged chance encounters, always delivered with that same condescending smirk. Her tactics grew bolder, moving beyond verbal assaults. My mail would occasionally go missing or arrive tampered with. Small items in my yard would be subtly rearranged, a clear sign of unauthorized presence. It was psychological warfare, designed to unsettle, to provoke a reaction. She was testing boundaries, trying to push me to a breaking point where I might reveal some perceived flaw. My private vehicle, in particular, remained a focal point of her scrutiny. She'd hover nearby, pretending to walk her dog or chat with a neighbor, but her eyes were always on my garage, on my car, with an intensity that went far beyond casual curiosity. This relentless intrusion, this constant chipping away at my personal space, began to awaken instincts I thought I had long buried in the quiet of my retirement. The turning point arrived not with an explosion of conflict, but with a quiet, unsettling observation. I saw Karen engaged in a hushed, intense conversation with an unfamiliar individual, a man who exuded an air of unease, far removed from the typical suburbanite. Their exchange was swift, almost furtive, and I caught a glimpse of a small, discreet package changing hands. The scene itself lasted mere moments, but it was enough. The casual ease with which Karen moved in this clandestine ballet, her practiced glances around her, the way the stranger melted back into the shadows, it all screamed operative, not overzealous neighbor. This wasn't petty. This wasn't a Karen. This felt like something orchestrated, something with an agenda far more sinister than enforcing lawn aesthetics. My professional instincts, long dormant in the tranquil routine of retirement, surged to the forefront. It was a familiar feeling, a cold, analytical surge of suspicion that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the gut. The years of training, the countless hours spent observing, analyzing, and deciphering human behavior, all came rushing back. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and seemingly unrelated, began to snap into place. This wasn't about my hedges or my mailbox anymore. Karen was involved in something illicit, something that demanded the kind of scrutiny only a trained professional could provide. My quiet life was about to become an active investigation. I knew then that I had to act, not as a disgruntled homeowner, but as the man I once was. The rules of engagement had irrevocably shifted. This was no longer a personal feud. It was an intelligence operation, initiated within the confines of my own backyard. My home, once a sanctuary, now needed to become a fortress of information, a hub for discreet surveillance. I reactivated dormant assets, brushed up on forgotten protocols. My unassuming shed, once filled with gardening tools, transformed into a covert command center. State-of-the-art surveillance equipment, remnants from a past life, found new purpose. Miniature, high-definition cameras, no larger than a button, were meticulously placed among the hydrangeas within the eaves of my garage, even subtly disguised as landscape lighting. Motion sensors, directional microphones, infrared triggers, every conceivable method of observation was deployed, designed to capture every shadow, every whisper, every fleeting movement without detection. This wasn't about catching Karen in another trivial act of harassment. This was about uncovering the truth behind her sudden shift from petty tyrant to clandestine operator. I knew she wouldn't even realize she was being watched, analyzed, and ultimately targeted by someone far more experienced in the art of the unseen. She saw a quiet retiree, an easy mark. She failed to see the hardened veteran, the man who knew how to blend into the background while observing everything. My anonymity was my greatest asset, a powerful cloak of invisibility, and Karen, in her unwitting arrogance, had just pulled the curtain back on a stage she never knew existed, setting herself up to be the star of a show she wouldn't control. My sustained surveillance began to unmask Karen's true nature. She wasn't just an overzealous HOA president or a notorious gossip monger. She was entangled in a deep and potentially dangerous predicament. Her actions had transcended mere annoyance, now laced with a profound resentment and a clear desire for retribution. I observed her for hours through my hidden cameras, capturing every movement, every hushed conversation. Her face was perpetually etched with tension, her eyes betraying a restless anxiety and an undeniable anger. She'd speak frantically on her phone, often in tones of frustration and despair, her gaze constantly drifting towards my home. It became undeniably clear that I had become her target, but the crucial question remained: how far would she truly go? From her agitated conversations, I picked up cues that were all too familiar from my professional life. Words like deadline, pressure, and fix this problem frequently escaped her lips. She was clearly telling someone that she needed to get him out of her life, or destroy him. Hearing those words sent a cold, familiar shiver down my spine. This was no longer a trivial neighborly dispute. This was a serious, premeditated scheme, one that threatened my reputation and my very freedom. I understood that when individuals like Karen are pushed to desperation, their actions become unpredictable and often incredibly dangerous. My car, which had become the focal point of her obsession, was now sounding an alarm in my mind. I knew she would target it, but the exact method and the what remained a chilling mystery. The shroud of night typically offers concealment, but from my vantage point, nothing remained hidden. My comprehensive surveillance system, meticulously installed throughout my garage and its surroundings, recorded the precise moment had anticipated. In the dead of night, while the entire neighborhood slept, Karen advanced towards my garage. Her footsteps were light, almost imperceptible, yet her every movement betrayed a palpable unease and a fear of detection. Clutched in her hand was a small, unassuming package, which she held with extreme care. She managed to open my car door. How she gained access was a secondary question that lingered in my mind. But my primary focus remained on her intentions and swiftly concealed the package within the car's interior. Every minute detail, every swift motion, was captured and archived in my digital records. As she turned to leave, a strange glint appeared in her eyes. There was fear, certainly, but also a sinister glimmer of perverse satisfaction. She believed she had successfully executed a flawless plan to incriminate me. She thought she had ensnared an innocent man in her web of deceit. What she failed to comprehend was that the man she perceived as vulnerable had navigated through thousands of such traps in his career. She was blissfully unaware that this very action, which she intended for my downfall, was, in fact, the commencement of her own. I knew then that the next move would be mine, and I was certain it would be a decisive one. A move Karen would never forget for the rest of her life. With the first light of dawn, I began my day by addressing what had now become my paramount priority: reviewing the night surveillance footage. In my secret study, a space where I had discreetly kept certain vestiges of my past profession, I settled before the monitor. The footage played, Karen's every motion, her body language, the flicker of fear and triumph in her eyes. Everything was starkly clear. The precise moment she placed that small package in my car was etched into my mind. My gaze held no anger, only a sharp, analytical intensity. This was no innocent act. This was a serious crime, meticulously planned and executed. I replayed the footage countless times, scrutinizing it from every angle. Her hand movements, the size of the package, the exact spot where she concealed it. Every detail was imprinted upon my memory. My extensive past experience had taught me that even the smallest details can unravel the biggest secrets. And this time, that secret directly concerned an attempt to destroy my very life. My thoughts were consumed by the contents of that package and Karen's true motive. Every module of FBI training relevant to such cases was now being recalled. Every instinct honed over decades reawakened. This was the moment to resurrect my former profession, to unleash the dormant detective within me. The tranquility of my retirement had abruptly transformed into a mission. Now, the time had come to retrieve the evidence of the crime. Every step was executed with utmost caution, every action adhering strictly to protocol. Donning gloves, I approached my car. From the precise location where Karen had concealed it, I very carefully extracted the small package. This seemingly innocuous parcel, so unassuming from the outside, had now become the pivotal evidence in one of the greatest challenges of my life. I carried it to my secret lab, a hidden space where all the necessary equipment from my former profession was meticulously maintained. There, I proceeded to conduct a thorough field test on the package's contents. The results of the test quickly materialized. My trained eyes immediately identified the substance. It was cocaine, a significant quantity, certainly enough to warrant severe federal charges for any ordinary individual. There was no trace of surprise on my face, only a deep, profound sense of confirmation. My suspicions had hardened into undeniable certainty. Karen had crossed a line she could never uncross. She hadn't merely harassed me. She had committed a grave felony. She had attempted to frame me. But what she failed to realize was that the man she sought to ensnare was, in fact, a master in the art of weaving and unraveling such intricate webs. The next move was clear. Karen had committed the biggest crime of her life, and now she would pay the ultimate price. The peace of my retirement had ended that day, but in its place, a new mission had begun, the mission of absolute justice. The stage was set, the final act meticulously planned. I orchestrated a formal meeting, cloaked under the pretense of addressing Corinne's persistent concerns about my property. I ensured it was formal, documented, and critically, that the HOA president and a keyboard member were present, witnesses to the inevitable. Corinne arrived with her customary air of self-importance, a condescending smirk plastered across her face, radiating an almost palpable smugness. She viewed me as a lamb being led to slaughter, a man about to be utterly crushed under the fabricated weight of her accusations. In her deluded mind, she was walking into a routine complaint session, confident of her victory, utterly oblivious to the fact that she was stepping into a meticulously crafted trap, one designed by hands far more adept at psychological warfare than she could ever comprehend. I allowed her to speak first, observing her performance with a cold, detached professionalism. I listened patiently as she meticulously recounted a wholly fabricated narrative of my supposed suspicious activities, her voice dripping with self-righteous indignation. She painted a vivid, yet entirely false, picture of me as a recluse, a potential threat to the community, building her flimsy case for my immediate expulsion from the neighborhood. Throughout her theatrical monologue, she smugly avoided any mention of her own late-night excursions to my garage. Her performance was almost commendable, if it weren't so transparently deceitful to a trained eye. She spoke with an unshakable conviction, never once glancing at the discreet camera lens, never suspecting the silent witnesses recording her every lie, every calculated deception. Her confidence was her Achilles heel, setting the perfect prelude for her impending downfall. When her self-serving tirade finally reached its crescendo, a profound, chilling silence descended upon the room. I allowed it to hang heavy in the air, a deliberate precursor to the impending storm. Then, without uttering a single word, I turned with measured steps to the monitor. The screen instantly flickered to life, displaying the crystal-clear, time-stamped footage from my hidden cameras. Gasps of shock and disbelief erupted from the HOA board members, their faces paling in unison. Corinne's confident smirk, moments ago so assured, instantly evaporated, replaced by a ghastly mask of pure terror, disbelief, and a desperate, animalistic denial. She watched, transfixed and horrified, as her own image, illuminated by night vision, meticulously planted the package in my car. Her vehement denials, once so forceful, choked in her throat. She lunged frantically towards the screen, screaming incoherently, as if she could somehow physically erase the undeniable truth unfolding before her eyes. I allowed her a few agonizing moments in her panic, letting the full, crushing weight of her monstrous actions sink into her very soul. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I reached into my jacket pocket. The cold, familiar weight of the badge rested in my palm. I held it up, allowing the official insignia to gleam starkly under the office lights. Her eyes, wide with primal fear, fixated on it, then flickered back to my face. Her entire body seemed to deflate, the color draining completely as the full, horrifying reality of her colossal mistake crashed over her. My voice, now devoid of any pretense of retirement, was cold, measured, and resonated with an undeniable authority that brooked no argument. "Corinne," I stated, each word a hammer blow, "you just tried to frame an FBI chief, and that, in my line of work, is a very serious federal offense." Her face, in that moment, was the starkest portrait of utter, soul-crushing horror and despair had ever witnessed, the face of a woman whose entire world had just spectacularly imploded.